So much for joining our training tonight. Redistricting the time for testimony is now. We will be going over some IRC updates as well as providing some guidance on how to provide testimony at the public hearings that will begin on Friday. Thank you so much for joining us again. I know it's a Tuesday night and the Suns are playing, so it means so much that you're logging on and that you are engaged and ready to learn. So with that, let me jump right into it. So if you've been on our calls or if you've been following the process, you may or may not know this, but this is what our commission looks like for this cycle. So our independent chair is Erica Newberg, and then we have our 4 commissioners, David Neal, Douglas York, Shireen Lerner, and Derek Watchman. Currently, the IRC is still building up their staff, and they are still holding their meetings every Tuesday at 8 a.m. So this is what our IRC staff currently looks like. There we have Executive Director Brian Schmidt, and then a new hire is the Deputy Director Lori Van Haren, the Executive Assistant Valerie Newman. Another new hire to note here is the Public Information Officer Michelle Crank. And then we have Legal Co-Counsel Ballard Smar, Snell and Wilmer, and the Mapping Consultants Timmons Group and NDC. As I said, the IRC is still currently building up their staff. Some pending hires are for the Community Outreach Coordinator, and the ED has stated that he hopes to have a recommendation for the commission by Tuesday's meeting. And then another important update is that the IRC may not be hiring IT support due to an IT migration that they will be having. So this might free up a full-time position for the IRC. So what do the next few months look like? So these are some important dates to keep in mind. So as I mentioned, public hearings will start on July 23rd, that's Friday, and they will go to August 8th. And this listening tour will go into every county, and the commission will hear testimony on communities of interest and why they should stay together. Then on August 16th is going to be the release of the census legacy data. This is official census data. However, it's just in an older format. It's just going to be delivered in an older format. Once the census data is released, the mapping consultants can begin uploading the information to the system, and from there start creating grid maps. And then one of the most important dates to note here is that December 22nd is the day where they ideally want to adopt their final maps. Now, this is a compressed timeline, and that's just due to a request by the Secretary of State to have those maps done by January 2nd. And so they've adopted quite a compressed timeline with the note that there is a couple weeks flexibility at the end. Just to look at the timeline a little closer, I know this is kind of small. I'm so sorry. I can get it in a loop. The 3 highlighted gray areas here are important because they are officially designated times for public review. So the first opportunity for public review is the listening tour. And then, as I said, that'll go from the 22nd to the 23rd through the 8th. Then right here, we see that census release of data will be the 16th. And then another important date to note here is the community of interest report. And this community of interest report is going to be a report of all of the information that the mapping consultants gathered during the tour. So oral testimony as well as surveys that I will go into in a little later. And then we have the grid map adoption, which is September 14th. The grid maps are based on population and compactness. So those are the two factors that will take into effect when the IRC adopts the grid maps. After that grid map adoption will be a 23-day review by the public. They're not sure at this time whether there will be additional in-person hearings, but they have agreed to put that on the agenda. The draft map development will be from October 15th to the 22nd, with a public review period of 30 days after that. The IRC also has not for sure said whether there'll be a round of public hearings during this cycle, but again, they have acknowledged that they will put it on the agenda and that there could very well be. And then comes a very compressed timeline up until the 22nd. As I stated, the commission did state that they were willing to be a couple weeks flexible on this 22nd deadline, but we will keep you updated as the process goes. And I just wanted to also indicate here that the difference between the grid map and the draft map is that the grid map solely deals with population and compactness, and the draft map will take into consideration all of the other criteria for the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act. So, getting into the meat of things, what did testimony look like 10 years ago? So 10 years ago, each hearing began with a presentation by the mapping consultants. A rough format that was given for this here listening tour was a call to order would start the meeting, would be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, an introduction of commission and staff, presentation by mapping consultants, and opportunity for public testimony after that. Individuals who wanted to speak were asked to sign in once they arrived at a hearing. Each person signed in to speak was limited to 3 to 4 minutes. This might be a little different this cycle. It looks like it's going to be about 2 to 3 minutes instead of 3 to 4 minutes. So be prepared to keep it at about 3 minutes. And then when the person's name was called, each person spelled their name for the record and began their testimony. At this time, we're unsure of whether everyone will have the opportunity to speak. However, what's positive is that the chairwoman did state that the commissioners should expect to get through all public comment because of the importance of this listening tour. So best practices, and these are just some best practices when it comes to giving your testimony and considering how you are going to deliver it. So my biggest suggestion would be to draft your comments ahead of time and practice them to make sure they fit within that allotted time and that you get your points across in that allotted time. It will be important to introduce yourself, where you live, and in which districts you reside. The commission wants to know that you know where you are and how best to describe a community of interest in yourself. Remember, and this is of so much importance, that the commission wants to know what defines your community of interest and the issues that are important to you. That's the information they're looking for, and that's what will help you hopefully get started to answer today. And then lastly, just consider what you feel you need to share with the commission in order for your community's needs to be represented in the redistricting process. So what is most important for the commission to hear? Why is it so important for your community to be together? Where are you? What defines you? So just making sure you get the most important points across and give them the information they'll need to best represent you. And then I'm not sure if everyone on the call knows in which district they reside, but I just wanted to point out this tool real quickly. I'm sorry, my internet's just a little slow. But this is going to be a tool that will show you where your district is, and I'll actually drop it in the chat right now. But it's going to look like this, and you are just going to enter your address here, and it'll let you find your district. And so let me drop that in the chat. Okay. And then there's also a way to look at the legislative map and congressional maps that were adopted last time. So you would just go to maps and hit statewide PDF, and it would download to your computer, and you could see all of the legislative districts. Also on the current website, irc.az.gov, and I'll also drop that in the chat. There are maps by district themselves. So instead of the whole state, it's the district on its own. Okay. And then some questions to consider when going into your testimony. I know it was hard at first for me to kind of wrap my head around what I thought my community was. So I wanted to just provide some questions and prompts that might help you deliver your testimony and kind of get together what you want to say. So the first one are, what are particular characteristics of your community and or neighborhood? So this can include demographic features as well as geographic features. Another one that is really important are, what are the common interests in your community? So what connects the different parts of your community? And there are different ways to talk about how communities are connected. One way I kind of like to think about it is like, what is the connective tissue? So what is it that's similar and holds your community together within those groups? And then what are the boundaries of your community? Right here, you can always explain your legislative districts and define where your legislative districts lie. They don't always have to be that specific, but that information is helpful. But you can just indicate a neighborhood or a demographic group of people or whatever you consider your community to be. And why should it be kept together? Some prompts to consider are the following. So our economic environmental interests are, or our community activities and services include. You could also use the prompt, our cultural or historical interests are, and our community needs and concerns include. You don't have to respond to all of these in your testimony, but using them as a guide for drafting the most important points regarding your community might be a little helpful. So I want to stop right there. I know that's a lot of information. I want to stop right there and ask for questions.
I understand that you can go to Florence, or it will also be, well, in my case, in Superior. Is there an advantage to going to Florence?
No. So the satellite locations will be joining in via their whatever technology they'll be using. So the commission will hear you speak whether you're at a satellite location or whether you're at the actual in-person location. So you will still have the opportunity to speak, and the commissioners will still be able to hear you because you will be being projected on a screen at the in-person location as well.
Drea, we had a question in the chat.
Okay.
Just that, making sure that we're going to have a copy of the presentation put out there.
So this presentation and all the resources we are going to provide here will be given to you by the end of the day tomorrow through your email.
And then I don't know if you were still going to go over, that might be for later, like the mapping process that the IRC might use, or the tool. I think they were the tool.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was gonna go over that a little later, but I can share right now. So the IRC on Monday actually revealed that on top of having public hearings, they will be releasing a community of interest survey tool. So it will be web-based 24/7, so not written. So it won't be, you won't have the opportunity to turn it in on paper. It'll be web-based and it'll be free, and you'll put your name. I believe it'll ask for your zip code, and then it'll ask a few prompting questions, and then it'll ask you just to define your community. And then the good part about this survey tool, and hopefully they launch it before Friday as they stated they were going to, is that it'll actually give you the opportunity to map your community. And if you go to a public hearing, and again, this is if they release the software by then, but ideally, if you go to a public hearing, when you state your name and you stated that you have also done the survey, they will be able to bring up your map as you testify, and so they'll be able to visualize it that way. I want to say here, a map is not necessary to testify, but this survey is a really good tool, and a map is a really good visual to have if you are able to complete it.
Good question that I wanted to highlight in the chat. And I think I can try to answer it. And then Dre, you can let me know if you want to jump in. We had a question about, Stephanie was asking, I'm wondering if these districts are used only for their Arizona elections, or will they also be reflected on the national elections? So what I wanted to say was, with regards to redistricting, there's the congressional districts, and then there's the legislative districts. So you'll have the in-state, like legislative type of borders that are going to deal more with the Arizona legislative seats, and then the congressional districts are more, U.S. Congress kind of cutouts for those representatives. Can you add anything to that, Dre, or did I miss anything?
No, yeah. So, yeah, as Eddie said, the legislative districts are state, and then the congressional districts are federal level. And then just to piggyback off that really quickly, when you are describing your communities, you have the option to describe it by district, but they are and have emphasized that they are looking for community of interest information. So when you provide your district information, also remember to just give a few characteristics of your community as well. That'll really help your testimony. And then I see a question from Sally that says, do we know where the locations in Tucson are? Yes, they do know where the PEMA locations are. There's a slide further at the end of this presentation that we can look at where the PEMA locations are. They're also on the website, the IRC website that we provided earlier. And then Stevie says, best to wait for next round of public testimony if you can't make it. So if you can't make it, the best way to submit your public testimony for this round is to use the survey tool that they will be releasing. And we will make that available to you as soon as we know that it has launched. And that is the best way for you to give your input this round. There will always be the opportunity for public comments every week, but in this case, for the maps and the communities of interest, definitely the survey tool. And Jim says, is redistricting both legislative and congressional? Yes, it will be the drawing of both lines. Anything else before we practice a little bit? Hey, awesome. So as I said, we're gonna practice. I will give you the prompts in the chat right now. Okay, awesome. So we're gonna go on to breakout rooms. We are going to kind of brainstorm how to put together and practice a little our public testimony. So I'm gonna put you into breakout rooms. The first thing you'll do will be like a couple of minutes just to yourself to answer a couple of questions, and I'll pop these in the chat. So the questions that you want to answer are, what are the common interests and shared characteristics of your community? And then the second question, what are the boundaries and what connects the parts of your community? And I prepared a little something today so you can just kind of know how to put something together. Like I said, this is very rough, and feel free to draft a comment however it speaks to you. But just to give you kind of an idea of what it might look like, I'll provide one now. So my name is Andrea Varela, AndreaVarela. I live in Casa Grande, Arizona, which is currently split between legislative districts 8 and 11 and is in congressional district 1. I am here today to advocate for the city of Casa Grande to be contained in one district instead of being split into two, and essentially unsplit the community. My city shares many common characteristics. First, the city is geographically situated in a rural area. This does not group well with some of the more developed areas we are currently districted with, but does group well with other small rural towns such as Coolidge, Florence, Arizona, Superior and others. Casa Grande is a small town with a small town feel. In Casa Grande, you can find locally owned businesses that are characteristic of the entrepreneurial spirit of our city. But being a rural community, manufacturing and agriculture are major industries for the city, and these industries are bringing growth to the whole community. Furthermore, people from across the city are employed in these industries. Another common thread that unites my community are that community services are accessed by the entire community, not just certain groups in certain areas. Furthermore, these services are located across the city and span both districts. These community services include the Parks and Rec Department, the Police Department, the Fire Department, etc. There is also only one elementary school district for the entire city. I do not feel the schools in my community should be split between districts when one board represents them. Their representation should be reflective of the school district as a whole. Demographically, the highest concentration of the population is white, with other minority groups spread throughout the city. These different minority communities are spread out. They are not concentrated within the boundaries of one specific district, 8 or 11. So why should they be split? By cracking the city of Casa Grande as it is now, it has essentially diminished the power of certain communities within the city to advocate for themselves and their shared interests, which makes representation less responsive to the community and its interests. So I made sure to introduce myself, where I was from and what LDs I was in and CD I was in. I made sure to kind of bind my city by sharing the common characteristics of what I wanted to see as a community. And then I shared what I felt about how it was now and how I felt it should be going forward. So those are some things to think about as you answer the couple of questions that we've put in the chat. And then like those prompts before, just, you know, some things to think about are, I'm sorry, some other prompts that might help you get started are my community shares. So what does your community share? So my community shares and the characteristics of my community are. And then our historic and cultural interests include, our economic interests are. So those are some prompting words for you as you go into this breakout. So we're gonna break out for about 8 to 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and debrief a little, and then finish out the presentation. So bear with me for just a second.
Yay.
Come back.
I wanted to, oh, maybe Candy can bring it up in this call, but we were talking about her neighborhood and her community of interest. So she was highlighting that she's a neighbor in a neighborhood with 55 and up. And she's kind of between Florence and Coolidge. And then also there's other neighborhoods that are nearby. And she was just kind of asking how we're making sure that we're, what we're asking the IRC, or what we're telling the IRC. And I was trying to emphasize that what I would do, but it might depend on everybody's situation, was highlight her own neighborhood. And if there's similar neighborhoods nearby that are also, 55 and up, or, draw that map out, including that group, because again, they all would have similar interests with regards to, I guess, benefits, what they do for leisure, what they need work-wise. And we wouldn't want those neighborhoods split, right? We want to kind of keep them together so they can be effective in advocating for whatever they're advocating for. Did you want to add anything to that, Candy, or any other questions with the process?
That's kind of my main issue, I think. The fact that we're housed, not urban, but, sort of like suburban community within a larger rural area. So I guess, I don't know what that means, but I guess that has to be part of the definition.
Yeah. And again, it sounds like, at least what you explained to me was that, it's a wiser community, like we said, 55 and up. And I think that could be the main defining characteristic. And then again, highlighting that, and then again, having a boundary. I think, because you might not, it might not just be your neighborhood, right? It could be a larger area, and that's totally okay. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree.
How do you feel about that, Candy? I'm sorry. Do you feel you might need to practice in front of the mirror a little bit more? But we all have, we all have to practice.
Well, actually, it looks like I'm probably not going to be able to make it to the meeting after all. Turns out I have to go out of town Thursday through Saturday. So I guess the survey is going to be my vehicle.
Right. And that will be public record. And so we'll send that out as soon as it's available. So that'll be super, super good.
Definitely.
I guess I would like to know more about, where the borders are now and how that could be changed. I mean, it seems to me like, I know I'm in Congressional District 4, and then Coolidge which is next door, is Congressional District 1, is it?
1.
1, yeah. And I'd rather be part of Congressional District 1. How can I make that happen?
I want to highlight that I think in this first round, they are really asking about just your community. And then but it would be good to look at the current maps and see how they're drawn. But it sounds like they're asking for just what your little community is. And then other than that, maybe advocating like what you're similar to, but I don't know, Dre. I don't know if you can answer that better. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think the survey will be really helpful in helping you visualize it because it allows you to select your community by street, by neighborhood, by building. It's pretty specific. So
Wow.
maybe looking at it that way will help you. We will send out, like I said, like I kind of mentioned earlier, there is a site that has last cycles, so our current district lines. As the process goes further, we'll start seeing where the IRC is placing the lines. And that would probably be the best time to be like, say, I'm in CD4, but my needs and my wants are closer to CD1. This is how I propose including my neighborhood in CD1. And then you would get really specific. As Aris kind of stated, right now, they're just generally wanting to know what your community of interest is. So you can definitely state that and they'll understand kind of what you're talking about in terms of legislative and congressional districts. But they want to know, and the biggest thing, the most important thing is, why do you want to stay together? And that could include groups around you. So if you consider your community similar or part of the fabric of the groups around you, then that could well be your whole community. It doesn't just have to be your neighborhood, but it is how you see it. So we in general are advocating for our communities to stay intact, to stay whole, whatever that may look like. I don't know if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Of course.
Following up on that, Candy, are you west of CD1?
North.
Okay, north of it. And so CD1 is south of you? By the way, I'm in CD1. We'd love to have you. If you might, and I'm just suggesting this, you might want to advocate that your community of interest goes south and that you and your southern neighborhood have a lot in common. You and your northern neighborhood do not. And we're doing something similar up in the Flagstaff, Sedona, Verde Valley area. We are advocating that that whole area is a community of interest. We share medical facilities and workforce and shopping, and there's a whole nother list. And the folks in Yavapai County, which are part of it in the Verde Valley, are advocating that they have more in common with us, Sedona and Flagstaff, than they do on the other side of Mingus Mountain with the good people of Prescott.
No. Okay.
And I'd be curious from the RAZE staff if you thought that was a good, what you think of that strategy. So we're not mentioning CDs or LDs. We're not saying that.
Yeah, that actually sounded really wonderful the way you stated that. Really great. You hit the point probably better than I could have. That's a great way to incorporate the discussion of LDs and CDs into community of interest.
Okay.
Right. And then if you're drawing that map, you're making those boundaries, and you do feel like these neighborhoods, like right now, they might be split between CD4 and CD1, but and those lines matter, but you're talking about the neighborhoods. Like, are those neighborhoods, do you feel like it's a community, it's part of your community? That's something you can advocate for. So that does make sense. Yeah, I think we had Kim. It's like we have a hand up there. Hello.
Well, you know, it's funny. It sounds like we all have similar interests. I live we're in LD8 and I live at Saddlebrook Ranch, and we are not at all aligned with our neighbors to the north in that they are so rural, and our neighbors just directly south of us, Saddlebrook, Oro Valley, Sun City, Oro Valley, and all these. I mean, we are so much more aligned with them. As a matter of fact, I don't know that anybody travels up north for any, for commerce or any other reason, because there's no reason to go there. I'm going to also bring up the medical, how we all go, we travel. I'm just saying south. I'm sure you understand what I mean. For doctor's appointments, for grocery shopping, for the post office, for basically everything. And, and our representation should reflect that. So that's probably where we're going with this. So
Yeah, it sounds great.
like we're all talking the same language.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kim. How was that for everybody else? Any more questions?
We had Jim was asking, do we know how long Fridays?
So no, we don't know how long the meeting will be, simply because we don't know how many people will be testifying. I would, with the stock presentation by the mapping consultants and the introductions of staff and commission, I wouldn't expect to be there less than 2 hours. I do highly suggest also that you get there early. Last cycle, they had speakers sign in, so it's very likely that it will be the same way this cycle. So you want to make sure you get there with time to park and time to sign in, so you can be ready at that point. I am not sure if you are allowed to leave once your testimony is complete. They'll give that guidance, I'm sure, at the meeting. But yeah, I would say probably no less than 2 hours would be my guess.
So I had a quick question, Andrea. We didn't have a chance to talk in the breakout room about Prescott, and I don't know that much about it, except that it's a town and it's going to stay probably right where it is. I can't imagine them doing anything different. But I don't really have a underrepresented community of interest, but except for thinking that we should be in the same district as the other people who share our dwindling supply of water. But that would put us back with Flagstaff and Sedona, and I can see why, for more cultural reasons, you have Prescott still being relatively rural and conservative. That might not be the best thing to do. So I just don't know how I can be supportive to the cause of fair districting from here.
Sure. So fair districting also includes like advocating for your community as it is. So if you really feel that you're comfortable where you're at in your districts, go ahead and state that to the commission. There doesn't always have to be a change if you don't feel there needs to be a change. So that would be my suggestion. Also, I like to think about it a little bit in kind of like, I don't know if this will answer your question, but like, how would I describe it to a friend? So in the simplest terms, how would you define your community? And if it is like, these are my neighbors, these have been my neighbors for 10 years, these are the interests we have shared for 10 years, economically, this is how we are, culturally, this is how we identify. And all those things are, synonymous with how you feel now, then for sure, feel free to testify in that way. And it would be as impactful, I believe.
Thank you.
Of course.
Are you comfortable talking about, you have things in interest with people on the west side of Mingus Mountain, on your side of Mingus Mountain, as opposed to the other side of Mingus Mountain, which has the Verde Valley?
I moved here not too long ago and don't really know,
Okay,
honestly, what that would be. I don't think we have that much in common with, I think West is even more rural from what I can tell.
Stephanie got orphaned in a group. I was with her and then I got moved.
Yeah, me too. So.
Oh,
but I
you
still
too?
think
Okay,
that-
good. Okay.
Anyway, thank you very much. I just, I think I'll probably just be quiet.
And then again, if you don't want to speak, you can always use that survey tool that the IRC will be releasing too. I know speaking can be very, very intimidating, but thank you for sharing. Any more questions before we move on to our final slide? Okay, so I'm just going to go on to our final slide. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So the final slide is just the public hearing schedule. This is just I will take us to the website in just a second, but this is a snapshot of Pinal County. So the main location in Pinal County will be in Florence at the Pinal County Historic Courthouse. And then the satellite locations will be the City of Maricopa Public Library in Maricopa, and then the Superior Town Hall in Superior. These will all begin at the same time, 5 p.m. And as I stated, because someone asked a great question, the satellites will be viewable to both the commission as well as vice versa. So if you go, and I will share this resource as well, if you go to the irc.az.gov public meetings and hit listening tour, it'll take you to the bottom of the page that has the dates and times. So if they do not have satellite locations here, it's because either they won't have them or they haven't finalized them yet. But this is the schedule as they have released it. So I think someone asked about Pima.
There are two venues yet, and a couple of like Chinley doesn't or Sells doesn't.
Yes.
There's about five meetings that don't have venues.
Yeah.
Pitt County is one of them, I believe.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, some of these aren't updated. Today during the meeting, they did state that they'll keep people updated during through the newsletter, and we'll make sure to keep you updated. If
Question I wanted to point out to you when you get a chance, Drea.
yeah, can you point it out because my chat's not popping up right now?
Yeah. We had Danny asking, will the process for video testimony be made available? So do we want to try to think about what the video testimony is gonna look like?
Yeah, do you mean through the satellite locations?
Yeah, I believe that's what Danny means. Yeah.
So it seems as though the format is going to be the same. You will just be speaking into a camera. You will see the in-person location and the other satellite location being transmitted, and the commissioners will be able to see you. So the difference is just, of course, that you're not in person, but they will be able to hear your testimony live, and they will be able to see you as well.
Thank you.
Of course. And I did throw that link in the chat. So I wanted to close by saying that if you have any questions, if you need help building out your testimony, if you need help researching your area, please reach out to us. I would love to help you brainstorm and get that together. If you have more questions or if something comes up before Friday or before your hearing that comes to your mind, also please let us know. I know there were some technical difficulties getting in, so thank you so much for bearing in there with us. But we will make sure to get the presentation to you, all the resources that we've discussed. And please, please feel free to reach out with any questions you have. I'm going to throw my email in the chat, and I am always available to brainstorm that.
And I wanted to add that, at least me and Drea plan to be at the Florence location, and we're hoping to see people there. The more people that show up, the better. It always helps with letting them know that we're paying attention. So yeah.
And if you can't be there, again, the IRC will be releasing that COI survey tool. And just to note real quick, that will be part of that community of interest report that I had kind of highlighted earlier in the timeline. So the oral testimony as well as the COI survey information will all be compiled into that report, which will all go to the IRC. So if you can't make a hearing, please at least fill out the IRC survey, and we'll get that to you as soon as it launches. They're just waiting on a few changes to the form, I believe, and then they'll go live with it. So again, I wanted to thank you all so much. The fact that you're engaged and willing to learn and willing to spend this Tuesday with us meant so much. And I was so happy to see all of your faces and get to know your districts a little bit more, and have a great night. I'm not sure if the Suns game is over. If not, good luck to them. Hopefully they're doing well or they won. And again, thank you for sharing your Tuesday with us. Have a great night.